My name is Elias Van Cleef, and I am 67 years old. I own a trucking company out here in Albany, Georgia. Today I'm going to tell you the most painful story I've ever lived through. It is a story about trust, lies, and how the most humble person in my home was the only one brave enough to tell me the truth. If you have ever trusted someone with your eyes closed, if you ever truly believed you knew a person's soul, this story is going to hit you hard. Maybe you'll realize that sometimes the person standing closest to you is the one doing the most damage. Before I get started, I want to ask you something. If you have ever felt the sting of a massive lie or a betrayal that flipped your whole world upside down, leave a like on this video. Let this old man know he isn't alone in this pain. Go ahead and subscribe to the Grandpa's Journals channel right now, because I have more life stories to share that will touch your heart deeply. And tell me in the comments where you are watching this from and what time it is there. Have you ever been stabbed in the back by someone you trusted? I love hearing from every corner of this country and the world, and I appreciate you taking a moment out of your day to listen to me. I was born right here in Albany. It's a good town, full of hardworking folks, a place where everybody pretty much knows your business. My daddy was a long-haul trucker. He lived on those interstate highways. I grew up watching him pull out of the driveway before dawn with a loaded rig, only to come back weeks later, exhausted but wearing a smile because he'd brought home the money to keep us fed. My mama looked after the five of us mostly on her own. She was a powerhouse of a woman, the kind who never complained. She'd be over a hot stove cooking collard greens and cornbread, singing gospel songs while she worked. I learned the value of hard work from my daddy, and from my mama, I learned that family was sacred. At least, that's what I used to think. I grew up helping my daddy. By the time I was 12 years old, I was riding shotgun on short trips, learning how to handle the rig, how to strap down the freight, and how to talk to the brokers. My daddy used to say, "Son, a real man is only as good as his word. If you make a promise, you keep it. If you get married, it's for life. If you have a family, you protect it at all costs." I held those words like they were pure gold. I thought everyone lived by that same code. When my daddy passed away, I was just over 20 years old. I was left with his beat-up old truck and a mountain of debt. But I didn't quit. I took that rig, fixed it up as best I could, and hit the road. I traveled everywhere: Atlanta, Chicago, Dallas, Charlotte. I'd spend 15-20 days on the road, sleeping in that cab, eating cold sandwiches, and showering at truck stops. But the money started coming in. I paid off my daddy's debts, bought another truck, then another. I grew the business slowly, with sweat and honesty. It was around that time I met Corinne. She came from a traditional family here in town, folks with land and a solid reputation. I was just a trucker starting to make something of myself, but she was beautiful, sweet, and always at the church. She was there every Sunday morning, every Wednesday night. She always had her Bible in her hand, a real good girl from a good family. I thought to myself, this is the right woman for me. A God-fearing woman who'll take care of the home while I'm out working. I married her thinking I'd found a treasure. I had no idea I was walking into a lie that would last a lifetime. Our life started out simple. I was out on the road, and she was keeping the house. Soon enough, the kids came along. First Curtis, then Maya. I was happy. I'd come back from those long hauls tired and covered in grease, but I was joyful. Corinne always welcomed me home. There was always a hot meal on the table. The house was spotless, and the kids were clean and fed. She kept going to church every single day. "It's my peace," she'd say. "I need to pray for our marriage and for the Lord to protect you on those highways." I thought it was beautiful. I felt so lucky to have a woman so dedicated to God and family. The business kept growing. I went from 2 trucks to 5, then 10. Today I have a fleet of 40 rigs, a big office, and plenty of employees. But the price of that success was living on the road. Being gone for 20 days at a time became the norm. Corinne stayed home with the kids, often with the help of Reverend Thaddeus Lattimore, the patron of our church. He'd been a friend of her family forever. He'd baptized our children. He was a man respected by everyone in this town. "Don't you worry, Elias," Corinne would say. "Reverend Lattimore looks after us while you're away. He's a man of God. I thank the Lord for having such a dedicated pastor looking out for my kin." I hired Ruthie Mae Pendergrass when the kids were still little. She came to my door needing a job, a widow with her own children to support. She was a humble woman, but honest as the day is long. She started as our housekeeper. She cleaned the place, did the laundry, and cooked. Over time, she became part of the family. She worked for us for 25 years. 25 years of seeing everything, hearing everything, and keeping her mouth shut. Because what she saw, Lord have mercy, what she saw would destroy any family. But I knew nothing. I traveled with a light heart, worked hard, and came home thinking I had the perfect life. The devoted wife, the obedient kids, the orderly home. It was all a lie, a massive, calculated lie. And the only person who knew the truth was the help. The most humble person in the house, the one no one paid much attention to as she scrubbed the floors and washed the dishes in silence. She knew, and she carried that secret for 20 years until her conscience wouldn't let her breathe anymore. It was a Monday morning. I happened to be home because I didn't have a haul scheduled. Ruthie Mae came to talk to me. She was shaking, pale as a ghost. She looked like she was about to pass out. "Mr. Elias," she said, her voice thin, "I've been carrying a secret for 20 years. I can't do it no more. I got to tell you." I looked at her, confused. 20 years? What kind of secret could it be? "Go ahead, Ruthie Mae," I said. "What's on your mind?" She took a deep breath, closed her eyes, and the words that came out of her mouth changed my life forever. "When you're out on the road, your wife don't sleep alone, and I know exactly who the man is." Those words rang in my head like a bell. I froze. I felt my legs go weak. "What are you talking about, Ruthie Mae?" I managed to ask. She just shook her head, tears streaming down her face. "Let me start from the beginning, Mr. Elias. You need to understand it all." And that was how she started talking, while I felt my whole world turn into dust. But before I get to that terrible day, I need to go back a bit. I need to tell you how I built this life, this marriage, and all this trust that was thrown in the trash. Because the story doesn't start with Ruthie Mae's confession. It starts way back in my childhood here in Georgia, when I was just a boy in short pants running barefoot through the neighborhood. My daddy, like I said, was a rough man, didn't talk much, but he had a good heart. He'd leave before the sun came up and stay gone for weeks. I remember the smell of diesel on his clothes and the roar of that old truck engine in the driveway. My mama always told me, your daddy is a good man, he works honest, he comes home, and he takes care of us. That's what matters. I grew up believing that. I thought every man was like that, and every woman was as faithful as my mama. We were 5 siblings, and I was the oldest. We lived in a simple house with 3 bedrooms and a wood-burning stove. Mama would get up before the sun to make coffee. Strong coffee, as strong as her spirit. We'd have biscuits, fresh butter from the neighbor's farm, and grits. A real southern breakfast that filled your belly and your soul. While we ate, Mama was already at the stove making lunch. Rice, beans, fried okra, and fatback. Simple food, but there was plenty of it. I grew up watching my daddy work and my mama handle everything alone. She never complained. I never heard her say a bad word about my daddy, even though he was gone so much. He's out there working for us, she'd say. A man who works deserves respect. I learned that work was sacred. I learned that a real man provides for his family, and that trust is the foundation of everything. When I was 12, I started going on short hauls with Daddy, Albany to Savannah, Albany to Macon. He taught me everything. How to tie down a load, how to check the tires, how to calculate fuel. Pay attention, son, he'd say. One day, this will be yours. Trucking isn't just about driving. It's about taking care of things and respecting people. Just like a marriage. You take care of it, you respect it, and it'll last a lifetime. I kept those words like they were verses from the Bible. On those trips, we'd stop at roadside diners and eat soul food, smothered chicken, red rice, and fresh corn on the cob. My daddy would talk with other truckers, swapping stories about the road and the freight. I'd stay quiet, just listening and learning. I learned that in the world of trucking, a man's word is better than a contract. If you say you're going to pick up a load, you pick it up. If you say you'll deliver on time, you deliver. Honor meant everything. We'd go back home, and Mama was always there waiting. The house was clean, the food was ready, and she had a smile on her face. I never saw Mama look cross at Daddy. I never saw them fight. I never saw doubt. I thought every marriage was like that. That when you marry a decent woman, you can travel with a peaceful mind, knowing she'll be there waiting, faithful, and tending to the home. Lord, I was naive. My daddy died when I was still young, a sudden heart attack in the middle of a trip. They found him in the cab of his truck, his hand still on the wheel. He died doing what he loved. The pain was massive, but the responsibility was even bigger. I was left with that old, beat-up rig and the debt Daddy had left behind. It was either me or the family went hungry. I took it all. I took the truck to a mechanic in town, Mr. Sterling, who was a friend of my daddy's. Elias, he told me, this truck is on its last legs, but I'm going to fix it up for you. Your daddy was a good man, and so are you. Pay me when you can. He fixed it practically for free, only charging for the parts. Good people still exist. I learned that too. That's when I started driving solo. I was scared, I won't lie. I was young, and the road was dangerous. But it was that, or let my mama and siblings suffer. I took small loads at first, hauling corn from Albany to Valdosta, hauling peanuts to Dothan. Freight nobody else wanted, jobs that didn't pay much, but they taught me the way. It went on like that for years, traveling, coming back, taking any job that appeared. I slept in the cab, ate cold food, and showered in cold water. But the money started coming in. Little by little, it came. I paid off Daddy's debts, helped Mama, bought clothes for my siblings, and had a little left for myself. With that money, I bought another truck. Old, but running. I hired a driver, a man named Marcus, who had worked with my daddy, a man of his word. Now I had 2 rigs on the road. Then I bought a third, then a fourth. The logistics company grew. My daddy's name, which was respected on the road, opened doors for me. "You Sebastian's son?" brokers would ask. "Then the load is yours. Your daddy never let me down." I honored my daddy's name. I never missed a delivery, never lost a load, and never cheated a customer. It was during that time, when life was finally looking up, that I met Corinne. She appeared in my life like a gift from God, or so I thought at the time. Now I know it was the beginning of my ruin. I met her at a church social here in Albany. I'd gone because a client of mine, who was a deacon, invited me. I wasn't much for parties. I spent all week on the road and just wanted to rest. But the client was a good man, so I went. There was sweet tea, a bonfire, gospel music, and that good small-town vibe. She was there, serving peach cobbler at one of the booths, wearing a pretty dress, her hair done up, a smile on her face. She was polite and kind to everyone. I bought a piece of cobbler just to have an excuse to talk to her. "Is it good?" she asked. "It's delicious," I replied, "but not as sweet as the lady who made it." She laughed, blushed, and looked down, that shyness of a good family girl. We started talking. I asked her name, where she lived, what she did. She told me her family had land on the outskirts of town, that she helped her mama at home, and that she was very active in the church. "I'm here every time the doors are open," she said proudly, "and I help out Reverend Lattimore with the parish activities. He always needs a hand." Reverend Lattimore. That name would become the curse of my life. But that day, when she mentioned it, I felt nothing. He was just the preacher, a common figure in her life. I asked her to go out with me that same night. She said she needed her father's permission. I went to her house the next day. It was a big, old farmhouse with a high porch and rocking chairs. Her father met me in the parlor. He was a serious man with a gray mustache and a suspicious look. "You Sebastian's boy, the trucker?" he asked. "Yes, sir. Your daddy was a hard-working man. Died young. Poor soul. And what are you doing with your life?" "I'm running the logistics company he started, sir. I've got 4 trucks now. Planning on more." He looked me over, sizing me up. You could tell I wasn't exactly the kind of son-in-law he'd envisioned. Their family had a name, land, and social standing. I was just a trucker, even if I owned the trucks. But Corinne insisted. "Daddy, he's a hard worker. He's honest. He's a good man." After a lot of thinking, he agreed. "You can court her, but no funny business. My daughter is a decent Christian girl. If it's meant to be, you'll marry in the church with the Lord's blessing." Our courtship was fast. She was affectionate, attentive, and treated me well. She'd bake for me, embroider napkins, the things girls used to do back then. She talked about marriage, about children, about building a family. "I wanted to be a dedicated wife," she'd say. "I'll take care of the house, the kids, and you. While you're out working, I'll handle everything here." It seemed too perfect to be true, and it was. But I didn't suspect a thing. She went to church every day, sometimes twice a day. "I'm going to help Reverend Lattimore," she'd say. "He's organizing the fall festival and needs help." I thought all that dedication was beautiful. I thought I was so lucky to be with a woman so religious. My mama loved her. "This girl is a blessing, son. Marry her quick. Don't let her get away." We got married in the church with a full service. Reverend Lattimore officiating. The church was packed, her family on one side, mine on the other. Corinne was stunning in a white dress, with a long veil and a bouquet of wildflowers. Reverend Lattimore gave a moving sermon. He talked about fidelity, respect, and the sacrament of marriage. What God has joined together, let no man put asunder, he said, looking right at us. Be faithful to one another in joy and in sorrow, in health and in sickness, until death do you part. I said I do, with my heart full of hope. She said I do too, but her I do was a lie, and Reverend Lattimore knew it. There was no honeymoon. I had a load scheduled and couldn't afford to lose it. When the business grows, we'll travel, I promised. For now, I gotta work. She understood, or pretended to. We moved into a rental house near downtown Albany. A simple place, 2 bedrooms, a living room, a kitchen. But it was ours. The early days were good. I worked hard, traveled a lot. But when I came home, she was always there. The house was clean, the food was ready. She'd complain a little about me being gone, but nothing serious. I know you gotta work, she'd say, but I miss you. I get lonely here. Go over to your mama's house. Go to church. Talk with your friends, I'd suggest. Yes, I will, she'd reply, with a smile that I now know was fake. Soon, she was pregnant with Curtis. I was so happy. I was going to be a father. I was going to have a son to raise, to teach him everything my daddy taught me. I took care of her through the whole pregnancy. When I was home, I did everything. I helped her up, rubbed her swollen feet, and got her whatever she craved. When I traveled, I left extra money and asked my mama to check in on her. But Corinne was never alone. Reverend Lattimore was always around. He comes by to keep me company, she'd tell me. He brings prayer books. We pray together. I thanked God for such a dedicated pastor. I thought he was a saint, looking after my pregnant wife while I worked. It never crossed my mind that he was taking advantage of my absence, that every time I hit the road, he was in my house, sleeping in my bed, and being with my wife. Curtis was born, and it was a celebration. A beautiful, healthy, crying baby boy. Reverend Lattimore baptized him. It was a lovely ceremony. This boy will be a man of God, he said, placing his hand on the baby's head. He will honor his father and mother. Honor his father. What a joke. He was baptizing his own son, and I didn't know it. A few years later, Maya came along. A beautiful girl with bright eyes and curly hair. Another joy in my life, and another lie in my face. Reverend Lattimore baptized her too. Your family is truly blessed, Elias, he told me after the ceremony, shaking my hand firmly. 2 beautiful children, a devoted wife, a growing business. The Lord favors you. I believed him. I believed every word from that man in the pulpit. Meanwhile, he was laughing at me on the inside. Our routine was always the same. I traveled, staying gone for 15 or 20 days. I'd call from payphones on the highway to check in. Everything's fine here, Corinne would always say. The kids are doing great. I'm doing fine. Reverend Lattimore stopped by today, brought us a blessing. And I, like a fool, thanked God for that man. When I came back, I always brought gifts. A doll for Maya, a toy truck for Curtis, a new dress for Corinne. I'd come home, exhausted and dirty from the road. But I was happy. I'd hug the kids, kiss my wife, and thank God for the family I had. A family that wasn't mine. Children that weren't mine. A wife who was never mine. But back then I knew nothing. And there was one person who did, Ruthie May. She'd come into our home when the kids were small. needing work. A widow with her own mouths to feed. She started working for us, cleaning and cooking. And she saw it all. She saw everything that went on in that house. While I was miles away, sweating to provide for a family that was betraying me. Ruthie May arrived when the business was really taking off. I just bought more rigs. The company was becoming known in the region. Contracts were coming in. Corinne said she couldn't handle the house alone anymore. She needed help. Since you travel so much, and with the kids being small and the house being big, I can't do it all, she complained. I agreed immediately. I wanted my wife to rest, to have time for the kids, and for the church she loved so much. Ruthie May was recommended by a neighbor. She was a simple, humble woman. "I can do it all, Mrs. Van Cleef," she said during the interview. "Wash, iron, cook, clean. I really need this job. I got my own kids to support." Corinne looked at me, and I nodded. "You can start Monday," my wife said. And that was how Ruthie May entered our lives. She came to work, but she ended up becoming the silent witness to the greatest crime committed against me. She saw everything from the moment she figured it out, and she stayed quiet. Not because she was an accomplice, but because she was poor, because she needed the job, and because she knew nobody would take the word of a housekeeper over the word of a prominent lady and a reverend. In the beginning, Ruthie May was just another person in the house. She'd arrive early, around 7 in the morning, make the coffee, tidy the beds, and wash the dishes. She was discreet and quiet. The kids loved her. She was patient and kind, playing with them while she worked. "Auntie Ruthie, tell us a story," Curtis would ask. And she'd tell simple stories about her childhood in the country. Corinne treated her well enough, but always with that distance between employer and employee. "Ruthie, heat up the food. Ruthie, wash these clothes. Ruthie, tidy the room. Orders here, orders there." Ruthie May obeyed everything with a soft, "Yes, ma'am." She never complained. She needed that job too much to risk it. I treated her with respect. My mama always taught me that all work is dignified. When I was home, I'd talk with her. "How are the kids doing, Ruthie May?" "They're doing fine, Mr. Elias, thank the Lord." "You need anything? Just say the word." She'd thank me, always shy, always grateful. She never asked for anything beyond her wages, which I always paid well and on time. The business kept growing. I went from 10 trucks to 20. I built an office and hired a secretary and an accountant. The house situation improved too. We stopped renting. I bought a large house of our own with a yard and a 2-car garage. Corinne was thrilled. "Now we have a real home," she said. I furnished it all. I bought a new fridge, a new stove, and a big color TV. I wanted my family to have comfort, but the price was me living on the highway. As the company grew, I traveled further, not just Georgia, but Florida, Texas, New York, long trips that lasted weeks. I called every day from payphones. "Hey baby, is everything okay?" "Yes, everything's fine. The kids are great. I am too. When are you coming back?" "In a few days. I love you." "I love you too." Lie. She never loved me, but I didn't know it. The routine when I traveled was always the same, or so I thought. Corinne would get up, take the kids to school, come back, and stay home until it was time to pick them up. In the afternoons, there was always something at the church. "Prayer group meeting," she'd say, when I called, and choir practice, organizing some event. Always the church. Always Reverend Lattimore. Needing help. Ruthie May saw the real routine. She saw Corinne getting dressed up more than usual on the days I was away. She saw her putting on perfume, doing her hair, and wearing her best clothes. "I'm going to the church," she'd tell Ruthie Mae. "I'll be back later. If the kids need anything, you're here." And she'd leave. Sometimes she wouldn't come back until 3 or 4 in the morning. She'd walk into the house like nothing happened, go to sleep, and wake up normally the next day. Other times, she didn't even leave. A car would show up. Always the same car. Ruthie Mae saw it from the window of her little room in the back. A discreet, black car would park in the garage. A man would walk in through the kitchen door. He'd stay until the middle of the night. He'd leave before the sun came up. Every time I traveled, it was the same thing, sometimes 2 or 3 times a week. Ruthie Mae never saw the man's face at first. He arrived after dark and left before dawn. But she knew someone was there. She heard the noises, the low conversations, and Corinne's laughter, a laugh she never heard when I was home. A different kind of laugh, more free, more joyful. The laugh of a woman in love, only it wasn't with me. For months, Ruthie Mae carried that alone. She cleaned the house, knowing that in the bed she was making, my wife and another man had slept. She washed the sheets, knowing what had happened there. She ironed Corinne's clothes, knowing she wore them to meet her lover. And she stayed silent. "It's not my business," she told herself. "I need this job. I have my own kids." One day, she almost got caught. It was early in the morning. She'd just arrived for work. She walked in through the kitchen door like always, and almost ran into a man leaving. He turned his face away quickly, but she saw. He wasn't just any man. He was a well-known figure, very well-known. But she didn't want to believe what she'd seen. "I must have seen wrong," she thought. "It can't be him. No way." But, it was. She confirmed it over time. The car, the voice, that would occasionally drift out when they thought no one was listening, the way he walked. There was no doubt. The man sleeping with Corinne, the man betraying me, the man using my house like a motel, was Reverend Lattimore. The man I respected, the man who baptized my kids, the man who performed my wedding. That man. Ruthie Mae felt sick. She felt angry. She wanted to tell me. But how? And to whom? I was on the road. There were no cell phones back then, only payphones. Was she going to call the office and leave a message? "Mr. Elias, your wife is cheating on you with the Reverend?" Nobody would believe her. They'd say she was crazy, that she was making it up to cause trouble, and she'd lose her job. Worse, she'd lose her reputation in town. She'd be marked. That's Ruthie Mae, the one who told lies about the lady and the pastor. She wouldn't find work anywhere else, so she stayed quiet, but the guilt was eating her alive. Every time I came home happy, hugging the kids and kissing Corinne, thanking God for my blessed family, Ruthie Mae felt her heart tighten. Poor Mr. Elias, she thought, working like a dog, thinking he has a real family. If he only knew. But she didn't speak. Years passed. Curtis and Maya grew up. I worked. I traveled. I built a legacy. Corinne betrayed me, lied to me, and lived a double life. Reverend Lattimore preached his sermons, gave blessings, and slept with a married woman. And Ruthie Mae saw it all, kept it all, and was dying of guilt inside. There was one time I came home from a trip as a surprise. I'd finished a job earlier than expected and decided to head back. I arrived in the middle of the night, around 2 in the morning. The house was dark. I opened the door quietly, so as not to wake anyone. I went to the bedroom. Corinne was sleeping alone. I breathed a sigh of relief, without even knowing why. I lay down beside her. She woke up startled. Elias, you scared me. Sorry, baby. I got home early. She acted strange, nervous. Is everything okay? I asked. Yes, you just startled me. I kissed her and fell asleep. The next morning, Ruthie Mae arrived for work looking pale. She looked at me, looked at Corinne, and said nothing. It was only later that I understood. That night, I'd arrived just a little too early. If I had arrived an hour sooner, I might have caught them. I might have discovered everything right then. But no. The Lord hadn't prepared the moment of truth just yet. The years kept rolling by. My business grew, my family grew, and the betrayal grew too. And Ruthie Mae was there, the silent witness to it all, until one day she started attending a different church. She went to a service with a friend just to be polite. She heard the preacher talk about the truth, about liberation, and about how hiding another person's sin is the same as participating in it. Those words kept hammering in her head. I'm participating in the sin. I know the truth, and I'm not speaking up. I'm an accomplice. She started going to that church regularly, gave her life to the Lord, and got baptized. A new life. And with that new life came a conviction. I got to tell him, I can't take it no more. Mr. Elias deserves to know, even if I lose everything. And that was what brought her to that day, trembling in front of me, about to destroy the world I thought I had built. Returning to that Monday morning when Ruthie Mae finally found the courage to speak, she stood before me, her eyes full of tears. After she said those terrible words, when you're out on the road, your wife don't sleep alone, and I know exactly who the man is. I was sitting there in the kitchen chair, feeling the room spin. Who is it? Ruthie Mae, I asked, my voice barely a whisper. Who is the man? She hung her head and wiped her tears with the corner of her apron. Mr. Elias, you ain't gonna believe me. Nobody's gonna believe me. That's why I stayed quiet so long. I'll believe you, I shouted without meaning to. Tell me now, for the love of God. She took a deep breath, closed her eyes, and let it out. It's Reverend Lattimore. The silence that fell over that kitchen was the silence of death. I felt like someone had reached into my chest and ripped my heart out with their bare hands. What? I managed to wheeze. The Reverend? Reverend Lattimore? She nodded, crying. It can't be, Ruthie Mae. You're mistaken. A preacher doesn't do that, especially not Reverend Lattimore. He's a man of God. He baptized my kids. I know, Mr. Elias, she interrupted, her voice firm now. I know it seems impossible. That's why I never said nothing. Who was going to believe the help saying the lady is with the preacher? They'd say I was crazy, that I was making it up. But I saw it. I saw it many times. I've been seeing it for 20 years. My legs gave out. I sat right there on the kitchen floor, leaning against the cabinet. 20 years. 20 years. How did you find out? I asked, needing the details, needing to understand. And that's when she started telling me everything from the beginning. She told me about those first months working there, when she started noticing Corinne getting too dressed up just to go to church. She told me about the times my wife would come home in the middle of the night, sneaking in, thinking no one was watching. She told me about the car that would park in the garage. Always the same car. Always on the nights I was traveling. She told me about the time she almost ran into the man leaving before dawn and recognized him as the Reverend. I didn't want to believe it at first, Ruthie Mae said, wiping her face. I thought I saw wrong, that it was just someone who looked like him. But then I started paying attention. The car was the same one the Reverend drove. The voice I'd hear sometimes when they thought no one was awake was his voice. And then there was the day I knew for an absolute certainty. What day? I asked, my voice raspy from holding back tears. It was that time you called from the road in the middle of the afternoon, asking me to go find Mrs. Corinne at the church because you needed to talk to her right then. You said it was urgent, Ruthie Mae continued. It was late, almost 9 at night. I went down to the church, and it was all dark except for the vestry. The light was on in there. I knocked on the door, but nobody answered. I pushed it open just a little. It wasn't locked. And that was when I saw them. You saw what? I asked. But I already knew the answer. I could already feel the pain of the truth. I saw them both, Mrs. Corinne and Reverend Lattimore, in each other's arms, kissing right there in the vestry, Mr. Elias, in the very place where he puts on his robes to preach the word. I just stood there, couldn't move. They didn't see me, thank the Lord. I slipped away quiet, went back home, and didn't even look for her. I called you back and lied, said she wasn't at the church and must have gone somewhere else. Every word was a knife. Every detail was torture. Why didn't you tell me then? I asked, knowing the answer, but needing to hear it. Because I was scared, Mr. Elias, she sobbed. Scared of losing my job. Scared of not finding another one. Scared of my kids going hungry. And I was scared nobody would believe me. It was my word against the lady and the preacher. I was going to lose every time. So I swallowed it. I swallowed it deep and pretended I didn't see nothing. But I saw. And I never forgot. I sat there on the floor trying to process it. 20 years of lies. 20 years of being played for a fool. Working like a dog. Traveling. Sweating. Building a legacy. For what? To support a preacher's mistress? To raise children? Oh, Lord. The children. Ruthie Mae, I said slowly. I'm terrified of the answer. My kids. Curtis and Maya. Are they mine? She looked at me with a pity in her eyes that hurt more than anything else. I don't know, Mr. Elias. I don't know. But Curtis was born... How long after the wedding? A few months, I replied. A few months. She stayed quiet. She didn't need to say another word. If the betrayal had been going on since before the wedding, like Corinne would later confess, then those kids could belong to either one of us. The pain I felt in that moment has no name. It wasn't just jealousy or anger or disappointment. It was all of that multiplied by 1,000. It was the feeling that your whole life was a lie, that everything you built, everything you loved, everything you believed in was fake. I had been deceived for the time it takes a man to build an entire life. What do I do now, Ruthie Mae? I asked, because suddenly I didn't know anything. I couldn't think straight. You need proof, she said firmly, because if you accuse them without proof, they're gonna deny it, especially the Reverend. He's got a reputation in this town. Everyone respects him. If you speak without proof, they'll say you're crazy, that you're making it up. You gotta catch them. She was right, and word against word, I'd lose, especially against a man with decades of standing. I needed concrete, undeniable proof. Help me, Ruthie Mae, I pleaded. Help me find the truth. Help me catch those two. I'll help you, she said without hesitation. I've kept this secret for 20 years out of cowardice. Now I'm going to help you find the truth for the sake of justice. Tell me what to do. We spent the whole morning planning. Corinne had gone to a church meeting and wouldn't be back until late afternoon. We had time. The plan was simple. I was going to pretend I was going on a trip. I'd tell Corinne in advance that it was a long haul, a week-long trip. I'd leave the house with my bags, my car, everything normal, but I wouldn't leave town. I'd stay hidden at Ruthie Mae's house, which was just a few blocks away from mine, and I'd wait. When she leaves the house, or when he arrives, I'll call you, Ruthie Mae said. Then you come and see with your own eyes. And bring your phone to take pictures. You need proof. Cell phones with cameras were a thing by then. They weren't great, but they'd do the job. I waited for Corinne to get back. She arrived around lunchtime, all smiles and smelling like perfume. "Hey, baby," she greeted me cheerfully. "What a surprise to see you home. I thought you had a haul today." "No, the trip is tomorrow," I lied. "I signed a big contract in Savannah. I'm going to be gone for 5 or 6 days." I saw her eyes light up. It wasn't joy for me. It was joy for my absence. "That's great, baby," she said. But what she meant was, "It's great that you're going to be out of the way." That night was one of the worst of my life. Lying there beside her, knowing everything, pretending I knew nothing. She slept peacefully, even smiling in her sleep. I spent the whole night awake, staring at the ceiling, planning, suffering, dying inside. How many times had I slept in that bed after she'd been with him? How many times had I kissed that mouth that had kissed a preacher's? How many times had I made love to a woman who didn't love me, who was only with me for convenience? The next day, I played the part. I packed my bag, put it in the car, and said goodbye to her and the kids. "Daddy, come back soon," Maya asked. "I will, sweetheart," I promised. "Take care of your mama for me." If I had known then that she wasn't my biological daughter, but I didn't know yet, I still had a foolish hope that maybe the kids were mine, that maybe the betrayal started later. I drove off, went around the block, parked far away, and walked back to Ruthie Mae's house. She let me in and hid me in the back room. "Now we wait," she said. "It might take time. She won't do anything right away. She's going to wait until she's sure you're far gone." I waited for hours, all afternoon, into the evening. Around 10 at night, Ruthie Mae's phone rang. It was her daughter, who had stayed behind to watch my house. "Mama, Mrs. Corinne just pulled out in her car. She's headed toward the church." Ruthie Mae hung up and looked at me. "This is it, Mr. Elias. She's gone. She must be going to meet him." I stood up, grabbed my phone, and checked that the camera was working. My hands were shaking, and my heart was pounding out of my chest. I was about to see with my own eyes the betrayal that had been killing me for so long without me even knowing. I left Ruthie Mae's house with my heart in my throat. The night was dark. The sky was overcast, one of those heavy nights that promised rain. I drove slowly, taking my time, because I didn't know exactly where Corinne had gone. Ruthie Mae's daughter said she headed toward the church, but that could mean a lot of things. Albany isn't a massive city, but there are plenty of side streets. I passed by the church. It was pitch black. The service had ended long ago. I looked around for her car. Nothing. I kept driving slowly, circling the blocks around the church. That's when I saw it. On the street behind the church, where the parsonage is, her car was parked in the driveway of the preacher's house, trying to be hidden. But I recognized it. It was the car I'd bought for her. A silver Nissan. License plate I knew by heart. I parked far away, 2 blocks down, in a dark spot where no one would see me. I turned off the engine and just sat there, watching the parsonage. It was an old two-story building with a front entrance facing the street and a back entrance that led to a small yard. The upstairs windows had a light on, a soft yellow light, like a bedside lamp, a bedroom light. I felt bile rise in my throat. My wife was in there with him, doing things I didn't even want to imagine. I took a deep breath, trying to calm down, but I couldn't. My hands were trembling, and my heart was beating so hard I thought it would burst. I grabbed my phone, tested the camera again. It was working. I sat there waiting for, I don't know how long. Could have been half an hour. Could have been 2 hours. Time stood still. I just kept staring at that lit window, imagining what was happening inside, feeling a pain in my chest unlike anything I'd ever felt. It wasn't just the pain of betrayal. It was the pain of humiliation. I had worked my whole life, built everything we had, provided her with comfort, respect, and affection. And she was in a preacher's bed, betraying me, deceiving me, laughing at me. I decided to get out of the car. I couldn't stand just sitting there anymore. I needed to see closer. I needed proof. I walked down the street slowly, hugging the walls like a thief in the night. I reached the parsonage. The back gate was cracked open. I pushed it carefully, making no noise. I stepped into the yard. There was a small garden, some flower pots, and a wooden bench under a tree. And there was a window on the first floor with the curtain not quite closed, leaving a gap. I leaned in, looked through the gap, and that's when I saw them. The living room of the house, old furniture, a crucifix on the wall, shelves full of religious books, and on the sofa, the two of them, Corinne and Reverend Lattimore, sitting real close. She was leaning against him, her head on his shoulder, and he was stroking her hair, affectionate and intimate, the way a husband is with a wife or a lover is with a lover. I lifted my phone with a trembling hand and took a photo. The flash went off, and I froze, thinking they'd seen me. But they didn't. They were too wrapped up in each other. I took more photos. 3, 4. All I could before I thought it was too risky. They got up from the sofa. Reverend Lattimore took Corinne's hand and led her upstairs to the bedroom. I watched them go. She was laughing softly, and he was whispering something in her ear. They disappeared into the upstairs hallway. The living room light went out. Only the bedroom light remained. I stayed down there in the yard, staring at that bedroom window. The curtain was closed. I couldn't see anything, but I didn't need to see. I knew what was happening. My wife, who promised fidelity to me at the altar, who wore the ring I gave her, who slept in my bed, was up there in another man's bed. And not just any man, a preacher, a man who swore a vow of celibacy, who promised to serve the Lord, who wore the cloth and preached the gospel. I sat on the garden bench because my legs couldn't hold me up anymore. I cried right there, alone in the dark, in the yard of the parsonage. I cried harder than I had since my daddy died. I cried from the pain, the anger, the humiliation. I cried for the wasted years, the betrayed trust, the squandered love. I cried for the family I thought I had that never truly existed. I stayed there for hours. I couldn't leave. I needed to see it through to the end. I needed to see her walk out of there, to have absolute certainty, to leave no room for doubt. I leaned my head against the cold wall of the house and waited. The early hours of the morning came, and the cold deepened. I started shivering, but I don't know if it was the chill or my nerves. Around 3 in the morning, The bedroom light went out. I went on high alert. Minutes later, the back door opened. Reverend Lattimore came out first, just in pants and a shirt, his hair messed up. Corinne came out behind him. She was fixing her clothes, running her hand through her hair, trying to straighten herself out. They stopped it at the door. He pulled her into a long, tight embrace. Then he lifted her face and kissed her. A long kiss, like someone who didn't want to let go. I lifted my phone again. I took a photo. The flash lit up the yard for a second. They didn't notice. They were too occupied. I took more photos of the hug, the kiss, the two of them together right there at the door. Proof. Concrete. Undeniable proof. Corinne got in her car. Reverend Lattimore stayed at the door, waving. She backed out of the driveway and left. He stood there a little longer looking at the empty street. Then he went inside and closed the door. I waited a few more minutes to be sure she wasn't coming back. Then I got out of there, went to my car, and drove to Ruthie Mae's house. She was awake, waiting. "Did you get it?" she asked as soon as she saw me. I showed her the phone, the photos. She looked and shook her head sadly. "Now you got proof. What you gonna do?" "I'm going home," I replied. "I'm gonna wait for her to get back, and I'm gonna end this lie right now." I went home. I got there before she did. I parked the car far away again. I went in through the back door, for which I had a key. The house was dark and silent, the kids asleep. I went to the bedroom, sat on the bed, and waited. Half an hour later, I heard her car pull in, the garage door opening, and footsteps on the stairs. She walked into the room quietly, trying not to make a sound. She turned on the bathroom light, took a quick shower, and came out in her robe, drying her hair. That's when she saw me sitting on the bed, staring at her. She jumped. "Elias, good Lord, you scared me. What are you doing here? I thought you were on your trip." Her voice was high-pitched, nervous. "I got back early," I lied. "Where were you?" I was right here sleeping." A bold-faced lie. "Really?" I asked, my voice too calm, the calm of someone holding a volcano inside. "Yes." "Why?" She tried to act natural, but I could see the panic in her eyes. "Sit down here," I said, patting the bed beside me. She hesitated but sat down. I grabbed my phone. "I need to show you something." I opened the photos. The first one was her and the Reverend on the sofa, embracing. I showed it to her. Corinne's face turned white, white as a sheet. Her mouth opened, but no sound came out. She just stared at the photo, frozen. "You want to see more?" I asked, scrolling through. The second photo? The two of them going up the stairs. The third? Them at the door, saying goodbye. The fourth? The kiss. "Elias, listen. I can explain." She tried, but her voice failed her. "Explain what?" I exploded. I couldn't hold it in anymore. "Explain that you're sleeping with a preacher? Explain that you've been cheating on me for 20 years? Explain that while I'm out working like a dog, you're in bed with that man?" She started crying, fake tears. "I'm sorry. Elias, please, just hear me out." "I don't want to hear another word," I shouted. 20 years, Corinne. 20 years of lies. I trusted you. You were my wife. A woman of God, you said. A woman of the church. And you were sleeping with the Reverend. She sobbed, but the words were empty. "Since when?" I asked, needing to know everything. "Since when did this start?" She stayed quiet. "Answer me." Since before I married you." The world stopped spinning. "Before the marriage." "Before? What do you mean, before?" I asked, my voice fading. You were already with him when you married me? She nodded, crying. I loved him first, but he became a preacher. My family forced me to marry. I married you, but I never let him go. I felt like I'd been punched in the gut. 40 years of marriage. 40 years of being second best, of being the backup, of being the fool who supported the preacher's mistress. You never loved me, I said, already knowing the answer. I tried to love you, Elias, in my own way, but with Thaddeus, it was different. It was what? I yelled. It was true love. And what was I? The fool who paid the bills. She didn't answer. She didn't have to. That was exactly what I was to her. A terrible doubt crossed my mind. The kids. I started, my voice trembling. Curtis and Maya. Are they mine? Corinne looked at me with panic in her eyes. Yes, they are. Of course they are. Are you sure? I shouted. Are you absolutely sure? Because if you were with him before we married, they could be his. No, Elias. They're yours, I'm sure. But her voice had no certainty. There was doubt, and doubt was already too much. We're doing a DNA test, I decided, right then. All three of us, me, you, and the kids. I'm going to know the truth. I'm going to know if I spent 40 years raising another man's children. There's no need for that, Elias. Please. There's every need. I cut her off. And you're going to do it. Tomorrow morning, we're going to the lab. And if they aren't mine, Corinne, I swear, I couldn't finish the sentence. The pain was too great. I grabbed a pillow and a blanket. I'm sleeping on the couch. I can't stand to be near you. I walked out of the room, down the stairs, threw myself on the sofa, and cried again. I cried until the sun came up. The next day, I took Corinne and the kids to the lab. Curtis and Maya didn't understand a thing. Dad, why are we doing a DNA test? Curtis asked. I'll explain later, son, I replied, not having the heart to tell the truth just yet. They took samples from all of us, blood, saliva. The doctor said the results would be ready in a week. A week that was the longest of my life. A week living in the same house as Corinne, but not speaking to her. A week looking at my kids and wondering if they were really mine. The week passed. The lab called. Mr. Van Cleef, the results are in. You need to come pick them up. I went alone. I didn't want to take Corinne. I didn't want to take the kids. I walked into the office. The doctor handed me a sealed envelope. Do you want me to read it to you? He offered. No, I replied. I'll read it myself. I opened the envelope and read the result. I felt the floor disappear from under my feet. Curtis. Probability of paternity, 0%. He wasn't my son. Maya. Probability of paternity, 0%. She wasn't my daughter. Both of them had the same biological father. And that father wasn't me. 40 years. I had raised 2 children for 40 years. I paid for diapers, doctors, school, clothes, toys, college, cars, and weddings. I taught them how to walk, how to read, how to drive. I comforted them when they cried. I celebrated their victories. I loved them. I loved them with all my heart. And they weren't mine. Neither one of them was mine. I walked out of that lab like a zombie. I got in the car. I don't know how long I sat there, just staring at the paper in my hand. The paper that destroyed everything I thought was my life. My kids weren't mine. They were Reverend Lattimore's children. The man I respected, the man I called pastor, had stolen everything from me. My wife, my children, my life. I went home. Corinne was in the living room. I threw the paper in her face. "Read it." She grabbed it with a trembling hand, read it, and collapsed. She cried. She threw herself on the floor. She begged. "Elias, forgive me. Forgive me." "Forgive you?" I shouted, nearly losing my mind. "Forgive you for what? You stole 40 years of my life. You stole my children. You stole everything. They're your children. In your heart, Elias, you raised them. But they aren't my blood," I yelled. "They're his blood. The Reverend's. The man who swore celibacy and slept with you for 40 years. And I, like a fool, paid for it. I grabbed my car keys. "Where are you going?" she asked desperately. "I'm going to end that preacher's charade," I replied. "I'm going to show this whole town who he really is. I'm going to show them who both of you really are." And I walked out, slamming the door, leaving behind a whole lifetime of lies. I went straight to the church. It was Sunday morning, the 9 o'clock service, the busiest one of the week. I parked right out front. I got out and walked in. The church was packed, maybe 500 people, maybe more. Folks from all over Albany, whole families. Old folks, young folks, kids. Everyone there to hear the word of God from the mouth of a man who had no business preaching it. Reverend Lattimore was at the pulpit in his white robes, leading the service. His voice rang out through the church, solemn and serious. "Brothers and sisters, the peace of the Lord be with you, and also with you," the congregation replied in unison. Pure hypocrisy. Peace of the Lord. That man didn't know peace. He knew sin, lies, and betrayal. I stayed at the back of the church waiting for the right moment. My heart was pounding, and my hands were sweating. Part of me wanted to scream right then and there, to expose it all, but another part wanted to wait. I wanted everyone to hear everything clearly, so there wouldn't be a single doubt. The service continued. Scripture reading, the hymn, then the sermon. Reverend Lattimore was talking about fidelity, honesty, and living according to God's commandments. Every word out of his mouth was an insult. "Thou shalt not commit adultery," he quoted in that theatrical preacher voice. "Marriage is sacred, brothers. It is the union blessed by God. He who betrays his spouse betrays God." That was it. I couldn't take it anymore. I stood up from the pew and started walking down the center aisle of the church. People looked at me, confused. Reverend Lattimore stopped talking. He saw me coming toward the altar. He recognized me instantly. The color drained from his face. I climbed the steps to the altar. The congregation fell silent, not understanding what was happening. "Elias," the Reverend tried, his voice trembling. "What are you doing?" I grabbed the microphone from his hand. I turned to face the crowd. 500 people staring at me, waiting. "This man," I began, pointing at the Reverend, "is a liar." The silence in the church became even heavier. This man who wears the robes, who leads this service, who preaches about fidelity and commandments, he's been sleeping with my wife for 40 years. There were gasps, shouts, people jumping up from their pews. "Elias, are you crazy?" Someone yelled from the back. "Blasphemy," another person cried. "It's not blasphemy," I continued, my voice firm now. "It's the truth, and I have proof." I pulled my phone from my pocket and connected it to the projector the church used for the song lyrics. The side wall of the church became a screen. I put up the first photo, Reverend Lattimore and Corinne on the sofa, embracing. The sound that went through that church was deafening. People were covering their mouths. Some were crying. Others were cursing. I moved to the second photo, the two of them on the stairs, her leaning against him. Third photo, the two of them at the parsonage door. Fourth photo, the kiss. Lies, Reverend Lattimore shouted, trying to grab the phone from Mila. It's a setup. He's lying. But everyone had seen the photos, and photos don't lie. People started shouting at him. You devil! Sacrilege! You hypocrite! There's more! I spoke into the microphone, and the crowd went silent again. My kids, Curtis and Maya. You all know them. I thought they were mine. I raised them my whole life. I paid for everything. But today I found out. My voice cracked. I took a deep breath. Today I found out they aren't mine. They're his. They're Reverend Lattimore's children. Chaos took over the church. People were screaming, crying, and walking out. Mothers were covering their children's ears. Men were trying to climb onto the altar to get to the Reverend. The deacons and ushers ran to the front. The Reverend tried to escape through the vestry, but I grabbed him by the arm. You ain't running away. You're going to own up to what you did. Elias, let go of me. He tried to pull away, but I held him tight. Own it. Own it in front of everybody. Tell them you slept with her. Tell them my kids are yours. I ain't owning nothing. This is a lie. Then explain the photos, I yelled, shaking him. Explain why you were kissing my wife at your door at 3 a.m. The congregation swarmed the altar, surrounding us. Explain yourself, Pastor, one woman screamed. Tell the truth. You baptized my kids. How could you do this? The voices multiplied. The anger grew. Reverend Lattimore looked around, cornered with no way out, and he collapsed. It was weakness, he murmured, his voice fading. Weakness, I exploded. 40 years of weakness. You promised a vow of celibacy. You promised to serve God, and you slept with a married woman for 40 years. You had children with her. I didn't mean to, but I loved her. His words confirmed it all. The confession. Everyone heard. The church exploded in shouting again. People were wanting to hit him, insulting him, crying in disappointment. The pastor I trusted. The man I respected. This hypocrite baptized my babies. I let go of him and stepped down from the altar. There was nothing more for me to do there. I had exposed the truth. I left the Reverend to the angry crowd, to the church leadership that would surely be called, and to the judgment of God he so often preached about. I walked away. The news spread through Albany in minutes. Small town, everybody knows everybody. Within hours, there wasn't a soul who didn't know. The preacher had a mistress. He'd been sleeping with Elias's wife for 40 years. Elias's kids were the preacher's. My name was on everyone's lips. My shame was exposed to the whole town. But I didn't care. I'd rather have the shame of the truth than the dignity of a lie. The church synod came the very same day. Bishops, officials, the whole lot. An investigation was opened. Reverend Lattimore was removed immediately. They stripped him of his position right then and there, in front of everyone who had stayed at the church after the scandal. 35 years of ministry ended in one day. A week later, the sentence came. Reverend Lattimore was defrocked and expelled from the church. He was no longer a pastor. He was nothing. 68 years old. A whole life dedicated to the ministry, thrown in the trash because of a forbidden passion. Or so he called it. To me, it wasn't passion. It was a lack of character, a prolonged lie. I filed for divorce. Fraud proven. A marriage based on a lie. 40 years of union dissolved with a single signature. Corinne wasn't entitled to anything. I kept the house, the cars, the company, everything. She walked away with only the clothes on her back and the shame she carried. The kids. Lord, telling the kids was the hardest part. I called them both over to talk. Curtis was 38 by then, married with a kid of his own. Maya was 35, also married. I sat them down in the living room and showed them the DNA results. "Dad, what is this?" Curtis asked, picking up the paper. He read it and went pale. This says I'm not your son?" "That's what it says, son," I replied, my voice breaking. Maya grabbed the paper from her brother's hand. She read it too. Her eyes filled with tears. "No, it can't be." "It's the truth," I confirmed. "You aren't my biological children. You're Reverend Lattimore's children. They lied to me my whole life." The sound of their crying was heartbreaking. Maya fainted right there. She collapsed onto the sofa. Curtis kicked the wall so hard he left a hole in it. "That bastard!" he yelled. "That preacher. And her, my mother." "Calm down, son," I tried to comfort him. "Calm down. How can I be calm? My dad isn't my dad. My mother is a..." He couldn't say the word. He broke down crying. Maya woke up from her faint, still dazed. "Dad," she said, her voice thin. "You're still our dad." I looked at Curtis, at Maya, at the two children I had raised, loved, and cared for my whole life. "Yes," I replied firmly. "DNA doesn't change a thing. I raised you. I taught you to walk, to talk. I paid for school, for college. I comforted you when you cried. I celebrated your victories. I am your dad. I always will be." We all hugged. We cried together, 3 people destroyed by a lie that lasted far too long. "We don't want to see her ever again," Curtis said, stepping back from the hug. "Not her, and not him. They're dead to us." Maya agreed. "They made us live a lie. They are nothing to us." And they meant it. They never spoke to Corinne again, and they never spoke to Reverend Lattimore. They cut them out of their lives completely. At family gatherings, at the grandkids' birthdays, I was the one called. She wasn't. Their biological father had his name on the birth certificate, but their real father, their father in heart, was me. And nobody could take that away from me. Corinne was left alone. No husband, no kids, no house, nothing. She had to rent a tiny room in a poor part of town. She lived by cleaning houses and washing laundry for others. The woman who had everything, who lived in a big house and had a car and comfort, fell into poverty, and nobody felt sorry for her. The whole town knew what she'd done. Nobody respected her. Reverend Lattimore moved back to the small town he was from. He lives with his sister, they say, sick, forgotten, without the robes he wore for decades. Nobody calls him Reverend anymore. Nobody respects him. He's just another old man who sinned and is paying the price. And Corinne, poor soul, or maybe not so poor, went after him. She found him, traveled to his town. "Now we can be together, Thaddeus," she supposedly said. "We don't have to hide no more. We can be happy." You know what he told her? "I don't want you. You destroyed my life. Get out." He rejected her. After 40 years of sleeping together, of using her, he threw her away like trash. She came back to Albany even more broken. 40 years of betrayal, 40 years of giving up a real family, a workspace, and respect. All for a man who didn't want her in the end. The irony of life. The months went by after all the scandal. Life continued, as it always does, even when you think it's over. The logistics company kept running. The kids kept visiting me, and the grandkids kept filling my life with joy. But the house was empty, too silent. For the first time in 40 years, I was alone. Truly alone. Ruthie Mae kept working for me. I didn't fire her. Quite the opposite. You were the only honest person in this whole story, I told her. You risked everything to tell me the truth. I ain't ever gonna forget that. She stayed, and slowly our relationship changed. It stopped being boss and employee and became a friendship. Long talks in the kitchen, afternoon coffee together. She'd listen to me talk about my pain, and I'd listen to her talk about her life. "Mr. Elias," she said one day, "you're a good man. Hardworking, honest. You didn't deserve what they did to you. You deserve to be happy." I looked at her, this simple, humble woman who never lied to me, who had courage when nobody else did. "Ruthie Mae, would you go to dinner with me? Not as my housekeeper, but as a man and a woman." She blushed and looked down, but she said yes. It was the first dinner of many. I discovered in her a real companion, someone who respected me, who was sincere, and who didn't lie. The town talked, of course. "Elias is with the help. What a shame. After everything that happened, he's going to take up with the maid." But I didn't care. Shame was betraying someone for 40 years. Shame was a preacher sleeping with a married woman. Me choosing an honest woman wasn't any kind of shame. The kids supported it. "Dad, Ruthie Mae looked after us our whole lives," Curtis said. "She was more of a mother than that woman. If you're happy with her, we're behind you." Maya agreed. She hugged Ruthie Mae and called her stepmama with affection. 2 years later, I married her. A simple service in a different church, no preacher lies, no deception, just family and close friends. Ruthie Mae was in white, I was in a suit, and we were truly happy for the first time. Today, I'm 69 years old, and she's 60. We live in peace in the same house, building a life based on the truth. Corinne is still alone, working as a cleaner, barely able to pay her rent. Her children don't talk to her. Reverend Lattimore rejected her. 40 years of betrayal just to end up with nothing. Reverend Lattimore is still sick and forgotten, living with his sister. He's not even a preacher anymore, just an old man who sunned and lost it all. I lost 40 years. I was deceived, humiliated, and betrayed. But I gained something money can't buy, right? The housekeeper who cleaned my house cleaned my life. She also gave me the courage to face the lie. She gave me real love when I needed it most. Ruthie Mae didn't promise anything at the start, but she gave everything. Corinne and the Reverend promised everything and gave nothing. If this story of betrayal and a long-held lie touched your heart, if you've ever been through something similar or know someone who has, leave a like, so this old man knows he's not alone. Subscribe to the Grandpa's Journals channel right now so you don't miss the next stories I'm going to tell with all my heart. And tell me in the comments where you're watching from and what time it is there. Have you ever discovered a truth that changed your whole life? Did you have to forgive a betrayal? Or did you decide to start over? This old grandpa is very happy to know who's on the other side listening to me. A big hug, the size of my heart. Life taught me that sometimes the simplest person is the most dignified. A pretty dress and a title don't make character. A preacher can be a sinner, and a housekeeper can be an angel. I learned that raising a child isn't about blood, it's about love. Curtis and Maya don't have my DNA, but they have my heart, and I have theirs. Today, I'm truly happy with a woman who respects me, with children who chose me, and with grandkids who fill me with joy. I lost a lot, but I gained the most important thing of all: dignity. The truth hurts, but it sets you free. And I'd rather live in the pain of the truth than in the peace of a lie. All rise. I'm really glad you're here and that I could share my story with you. If you liked it, show me by liking the video and subscribing to my channel. Let's see how many of us there are. Write in the comments which city you're watching from and what time it is. I'm so curious to know where all you wonderful people are tuning in from. If you want to support me a little extra, you can also send a small donation. I share new life stories for you every single day. And now, 2 of my most popular stories will pop up on the screen, so you can choose what to watch next.